This is the Blairing Out with Eric Blair show, and today I'm happy to have London, Maine, drummer and former member of Samhain and Tiger Army. How you doing today, London?
Thanks, Eric. It's great to be on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you. At what age did you discover music? Was your passion?
You know, when I was a kid, I was really into movies and stuff, and I thought I would, like, I don't know, be an actor or something. And I had a runny nose all the time when I was a kid, and I said I could never be on camera long enough to, like, not blow my nose, you know, or pick my nose or something, whatever. I don't know. I got it in my head that I couldn't be an actor, and I was really into, like, bubblegum music and pop music as a kid. And I tried to play guitar when I was, like, maybe about 9 or 10, and it seemed easier, and I could kind of hold a chord and wipe my nose, and it looked cool, you know. So I got into music. I don't know, you know, I was just a kid into movies and music and TV and the Monkees, and you know. And then when I got older, you know, I started playing drums and got into harder music, and you know, I've never stopped. It's been over 30 years now, and I'm happy to still be playing.
So tell me about how you've gotten your first real band, Reptile House, and how did you have this relationship with Ian MacKaye and Dischord Records?
Growing up in Baltimore, which is about 45 minutes from DC, you know, we had a little punk scene in Baltimore, you know, a little hardcore scene back in the early 80s. And but there wasn't as much happening in Baltimore as there was in DC. So we would drive up every weekend. They'd have these matinee shows, you know, and we'd go every week and, you know, see Minor Threat and Faith and Void and all the early Dischord bands. And it was like, you know, such a great experience for me to see all that early hardcore stuff. And Reptile House was not quite a hardcore band. We weren't a fast band, you know, but we definitely were, you know, influenced by all that stuff. And, you know, I just happened to get Ian's phone number, which I kind of was, it happened with Glenn too. I just would get random phone numbers for rock stars, and I would start calling them. Because back in the day, I had a friend who had like a calling card number that we could call long distance. So I would go across the street to the shopping mall because I didn't want to call from home, and I would go to the shopping mall and use one of the pay phones, and I just would start calling all these rock stars, and they would answer the phone. And you know, I got Ian interested in Reptile House, and we got to play in DC a couple times, and he produced the our first single. Actually, it's an EP, and it went really well, and we were going to release it on a label here in LA called Mystic. Do you remember Mystic?
I remember Mystic.
Notoriously
I think
crappy.
RKL was on that label.
Yes. Just they sent us this big like contract, and we were like a little punk
They're
band.
Hosers, dude. They totally hose the bands.
Yes. So when Ian heard that we were going to do this record that we had done with him on Mystic, he was like, no. We got to do something better with this. And he really inspired us to start our own label, which he would co-release the record on Dischord. And so we decided we would start a little record label and then distribute it through Dischord. And it was, you know, it was fantastic experience. The only problem is the moment the record came out, I got asked to be in Samhain. So it was very bittersweet to have that record out, to do the Reptile House tour, to go all over America. I was 17 at the time. You know, within the same month, I had gone up to New Jersey and auditioned for Samhain and gotten the gig.
Well, let's take a couple steps back here. Now, Ian MacKaye, this guy is a legend. And actually, he and Henry Rollins are best friends. So tell me about Henry Rollins.
I mean, Black Flag was a very, very important band for me. I mean, that was my favorite band. It's still, I have the bars tattooed on me. You know, that is a very important part of my growing up. I mean, they saved my life, man. Punk rock saved my life, especially Black Flag. You know, I went through a lot of angst, and seeing Black Flag and their records and being able to follow them on the East Coast, you know, when I was in high school was just, was something else, you know. But after I left Samhain, I was in a band called Dagnasty with Brian Baker from Minor Threat.
Yeah.
And we toured with the Rollins band. Right after Henry had left Black Flag, he started the Rollins band. And so we got to tour with Henry, and that was great. You know, I wouldn't say we're close buds, but you know, when we see each other, it's cool. And you know, he's a very intense, very, very smart, and a really fucking funny guy. You know, he's every time that I've gone to one of his spoken word things, you know, I have in my mind what's going to happen, and I'm always blown away.
You're 17 years old, you're in Reptile House, and then you go and audition in New Jersey for Samhain.
Yes.
What happens?
I was such a fan of the Misfits, and I had met Glenn in '82 when I was like, I don't know, 15, and the Misfits were a huge band like Black Flag for me. And when Samhain started, you know, that was just another obsession of mine with Samhain. And Reptile House was invited to open for them in Detroit, which was a hell of a long drive for us for one show, but it was so important to me to play for Samhain. So so I got to meet Glenn through Reptile House, and we ended up playing a couple shows with them. And right at the time that, you know, the Reptile House was kind of blowing up, the record had come out, we had gotten some touring under our belts, we were getting ready to go out on a, you know, a 25-date US tour. I had sent Glenn the record, the Dischord record, and I was like, what did you think? He goes, well, I haven't heard it yet, but Steve's left the band, would you want to try out? And it was tough, because Reptile House was my band, you know, but I couldn't, I didn't have a choice, you know. I mean, it was, Reptile House was my band, but Samhain, Glenn, the Misfits, it was a dream come true. Even just to go up, you know, and hang out and be invited up, you know. I didn't know what was going to happen with it, but I just decided it was, I was going to have to try. And I did well enough to make the cut, and and everything changed from that moment.
Okay, and that was in the summer of 1985.
That's correct. And I remember the band showing up for one of the last rehearsals before we left on tour. And I remember telling Joe, the guitar player, the news. And it was a really rough tour. It was a really rough tour. And Glenn encouraged me to go on the tour. He was like, you need to go on the tour, you need to get some experience under your belt, because, you know, you're gonna jump up to the next level, and I want you to go and do this, and it's the right thing to do for your band. Because I was ready to leave right then. And he actually encouraged me to stay with the band as long as I could, which I thought was really, you know, very courteous, and, you know. So as soon as the tour was finished, I moved up and lived with Glenn in New Jersey, and we started recording immediately, which was really tough on me, because I was really out of my element. And within like the first week, we were in the studio recording November Coming Fire. It's no preparation time for me. You know, I was really fresh off the boat and had been in a very different band. And that was a very professional situation where it was like, here's how the song goes, and roll tape. And I was like really unprepared. And
how was Glenn? Did he give you room to, you know, make mistakes and stuff like that?
Well, you know, Glenn's very professional. It's a business for him. He's, you know, everything is on his dime. You know, there's not a lot of time to, it's, the more time you waste, the more money is spent. It was trial by fire, you know. I really had to step up, and I had a lot of, was very, had a lot of anxiety at the time. You know, I felt really, you know, I didn't have much confidence at the time, because I had really jumped, you know, for me, getting into Samhain was like the punk rock, you know, Aerosmith or something. It was, I'd gone from a garage band to like a, you know, a big, I mean, they were like one of the biggest punk bands at the time, you know. So I had to step up my game, you know. I had to start taking notes. I had to start, you know, really listening. I had to start counting things. And I learned a lot. And Glenn was patient with me. You know, we had a couple run-ins, but it was always to inspire and encourage me, you know. And I got a lot of love for that guy. You know, he really showed me the ropes. And you know, some of it, you know, I learned a lot. I went to Glen school, you know, and I feel like I graduated, you know.
What was it? How long did you live with Glenn for?
I lived with Glenn for a couple weeks. He really encouraged me to get my own place. he was very very happy when I found a place in a little town called Linwood. No, Linwood. Was it Linwood? I don't know. I'm not that familiar with Jersey 20 years later. But I was right by the railroad tracks, and I moved in with my girlfriend. And only problem is I didn't have anywhere to practice, you know, and we would rent these studios, and, you know, everybody else could practice at home, and I lived in this little teeny apartment. I didn't have a chance to, like, you know, set up a drum kit. So it was, rehearsals were kind of tough. Rehearsals were the most stressful for me, because he just would actually watch me the whole time. He would watch me the whole time. He would stand in front of me and watch me the whole time, and sing and look right at me and point to stuff.
No doubt.
Yeah, and it was really stressful. On stage, it was all hell literally broke loose on stage, you know, and you could kind of, you know, you had a little more wiggle room on stage, but rehearsals were, they were intense. I always got, you know, I'm glad I didn't have ulcers, you know, because he was very specific about what he wanted. I mean, he's a visionary. He's a visionary. You know, in his head, he's got everything mapped out. And, you know, he wanted the rolls to be a certain way, and, you know, the beats were very, you know, even Johnny Kelly, who plays with him now, will say, man, his beats are twisted. They're not drummer beats, you know, and because Glenn can play drums, but he comes from a different perspective when it comes to rhythm. And some of the stuff that I had to learn was, like, really awkward, but it fit the song, you know.
And it helped you to become a seasoned professional too.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I was a young kid, and, you know, I had to really, there was a couple, you know, James Brown moments where it was like, you know, fine, $25 for missing a, you know, for missing a cut. You
Wow.
know? Not really, but I'm saying it was that sort of thing where, you know, you had to be on point. You know, you really had to bring your A game to the shows. But it was something that I could look at everybody else and go, everybody is on the same page. You know, there's no slackers in Samhain. You know, at rehearsals, they would go bananas. I'd never been in a band where they went nuts at rehearsal, not just when the lights went up and the crowd, you know, was there. They rocked out at rehearsals, which blew my mind. Everybody in my old band sat around, you know, like statues at rehearsal, and then jumped around on stage. But Samhain rehearsals were off the chain. It was, I almost like was too excited to play.
Would you say Glenn is a kind person?
I would say Glenn is Glenn, and I'd say he's been very kind to me.
Okay.
He's got his supporters. He's got, you know, he's got his naysayers, like any important, headstrong, intellectual artist. You know, I mean, you can't do what he's done for so long and, you know, not, you know, he's going to piss people off.
Yeah.
He's going to excite people. He's going to, you know, really, he's just an interesting guy.
Yeah.
He's interesting, and the older that him and I both get, you know, the more I see, you know, where I should have listened more than talked back in the old days, because I just could not. I got such a huge thrill by antagonizing him, which he didn't appreciate.
Well, the fact that you could get away with that with your life is pretty good.
Well, you know, it just was like I couldn't resist. You know, I couldn't resist. He was such he was my commandant, you know, and my comrade, and I have a streak in me that is very
sarcastic.
Not sarcastic as much as like I just can't quite ever go with the flow, you know, even if it makes sense, even if it's like the right thing to do. If somebody says, come here, this will, you know, this is the easy way to go, I've always got to somehow find my own way, even if it's to my detriment. And I could not get over antagonizing Glenn, you know, and nowadays I look and I just go, man, he really put up with a lot of crap from a teenager, and I appreciate that. You know, he was very patient with me, you know, because he'd say stop and I would keep going. You know, he would say, don't touch this, and he'd turn around and I would move it.
That's youth, man.
Yeah,
that's
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you
that's
know, and he's
youth.
the one guy that people look and go, that's the guy that you messed with? And I'm like, you know, that's just kind of how I operated.
Hey,
back
when you're 17, 18, 19 years old, you are invincible.
Oh,
nothing can stop you.
I was in my favorite band, and all I could do was cause trouble. All I could do was cause trouble. You know,
That's great.
Like, what can I wear that will make him pissed?
So tell me, okay, so how long did the first tour go with Samhain for you?
We toured, like we would do like little week-long trips, you know, when I first joined the band, we'd go out for a week. We did a big November Coming Fire tour, which was maybe 4 or 5 weeks. And then it was back home, and then it was recording. I mean, there was always something going on. You know, we went right from the November Coming Fire tour to working on Samhain 4, which ended up being the Final Descent record.
Yeah.
You know.
So after you get off the road, at what point when you're on the November Coming Fire tour, do you feel like I've got this now? Like now I'm confident. Now I'm feeling like I've arrived.
Well, compliments were pretty few and far between with Glenn, you know.
But the audience?
Oh, the audiences were great, you know. I mean,
did people come up and go, "Man, you're kicking ass on drums"?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That was, you know, and sometimes we had. I mean, I was a little erratic. You know, there's some stuff I see on YouTube that makes me fucking cringe. I mean, I'm just like, man, that's the one night that, like, I can't imagine what I was thinking. I can't imagine what I was thinking. You know, I was, I don't know, as a drummer, I was always trying to get better. You know, I was taking drum lessons at the time also, you know, and Glenn had this idea that I would start playing double bass, so I started taking double bass lessons. I actually was taught under Albert Bouchard from Blue Oyster Cult. He was one of the only double bass drummers teaching in New York at the time. So I was kind of doing whatever it took to keep in the band, because the band was definitely based on your performance. You know, you might get along great, but if you could not keep up, you were out. I mean, and that's eventually what, you know, led to me leaving the band.
Well, so during that tour, you never feel completely comfortable playing with Samhain.
No.
Okay. Now that tour ends. What do you just give me 2 highlights from that first tour?
The blood shows. We did a blood show. The cover of Initiums were all, well, not, I wasn't in the band at the time, but Steve and Erie and Glenn are covered in blood. And Glenn had this idea that one of the big shows we would play, we would do that. And it was Chicago, the Metro. Actually, there's the live 85, 86 CD is one of the blood shows, which sounds great considering that the blood is made out of Caro syrup, you know, like sticky, you know, like sugar syrup with food coloring. So it looks great, but it is literally like glue. You know, and it was all over the instruments, it was all over the drums, it was all over all of us. The frets, the fretboards and everything, it was just, you know, it was like playing underwater, you know. So that was awesome, but the kids loved it, you know. It was really, the pictures I've seen from that just look like a crime scene, you know. It's really, really, it's awesome looking, you know. Meeting Metallica on that tour, you know, which, you know, led to kind of a, you know, 20-year relationship with them, which has just been, you know, fantastic. But yeah, meeting Metallica on tour and signing autographs for them, it just blew my mind. You know, how appreciative they were and how into it they were. And so that's a couple things from the tour.
What was your first impression of James Hetfield?
Fucking awesome. The man.
Really? Did you?
The man.
I mean, that was a period where they were really into like abusing themselves with alcohol, and so did you party hard with those guys?
No, not even. They were on tour with Ozzy, and not even. We didn't party. Samhain was a clean band.
So Glenn is not a drinker, not a pot smoker, not a cigarette guy.
No.
But he loves his women, which is good.
Yeah, well, you know, you gotta do stuff.
Yeah, you gotta have something or eat.
Yeah, I don't want to say women are not a vice. Women are awesome. You know?
Yeah,
people ask me the same thing. You know, so that's your vice. I'm like, that's not a vice. There's nothing wrong with that. You know.
But some people, they can turn anything into a vice.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely. You know, everything in balance.
That's why there's what is it, Sex Anonymous or whatever. Yep. But anyways, I digress. So.
But yeah, there was no craziness with Metallica at all. It was pranks. It was fun. there's some stuff that involved Jason Newsted that, I'm sorry, Jason, I was kind of in on some of those pranks, and I feel bad about that. It was a little, they were hazing him at the time, and we joined in on some hazing with Jason, and Jason's a sweetheart, and sorry about that. Sorry about that. Just wanted to be part of the gang.
Yeah. Well, like I said before, when you're young, you don't think about stuff like that. You live in the moment way more. So okay, so then you guys go right into the studio after that to record Descent.
Yeah, Final Descent was originally called Samhain Grim.
Okay.
And at that point, we had just let go Damien. Kind of like me, Damien was erratic, with the gigs. I guess it was more noticeable for Glenn, and also, Rick Rubin had gotten involved at that point, and Rick was, didn't think that Damien was, was going to be able to cut it to the next, at where he saw the band going to the next level, and I had made the first, Damien did not make the first cut, which was sad because he really was a good friend of mine, and he really, when I first moved, when I wasn't living with Glenn, I was living with Damien and his family, and he gave me a car, and I haven't talked to him in a long time, and I hope to one of these days and thank him for being so cool to me when I first moved to New Jersey. Everybody extended themselves very much to me, which was nice because I was a kid. I was just out of high school, and I had to grow up real quick, So we started working on Samhain 4 as a 3-piece, actually, with Glenn playing guitar. And we recorded a bunch of songs. There was a couple songs that were so kind of evolved past where Samhain was at the point. There's a couple songs that Glenn actually programmed a drum machine to, because they were just like, they were pretty wild, and it wasn't something I could just learn as quick as he would like, so he just used a drum machine. And some of those songs are still on Final Descent. But we did the original version of Twist the Cane and the original Possession, which ended up being on the first Danzig record. Very well, Possession is pretty similar, but Twist the Cane is much different from the version that's on Danzig 1.
When Rick Rubin comes in and starts kind of taking over, how does that make you feel?
I was really excited about it because Rick was working with the Cult at the time, which are one of my favorite bands. Rick was very supportive. He would call me at home and ask me how rehearsals were going. He was very excited about having John Christ in the band, which was a guy that I knew from Baltimore. And I guess with rehearsals, though, rehearsals started to get, a little ramped up because they were changing styles like kind of every week, and as a real professional drummer, which I wasn't at the time, I wasn't able to switch gears as quick as they would have liked. It was like one week it was like, let's try an AC/DC groove on this song. And then the next week it was like, let's try a Slayer groove. I mean, it was really, you really had to be, pretty adept at a lot of different styles. I had kind of one thing. I was a punk drummer, and where they were going, I think, was something that I just was not able to, the difference between Samhain and the first Danzig record, is the difference between, a punk band and a rock band. A good punk band, a very three-dimensional punk band, but certainly, a hard rock band was something that I didn't really have any experience. I loved hard rock, but didn't really have any experience playing it.
So were you asked to leave the band, or did you just decide to leave on your own?
No, I was let go.
Okay, and who gave you the word?
Erie did. Yeah, and Erie and I were really close at the time.
They always get the close guy to do it.
Yeah, it was a sad night because it was so unexpected. But looking back at some of the things that I had, I definitely helped push it along with my attitude. Me and Glenn had a big falling out a personal falling out very, within a week of me being let go. And I don't know if that had something to do with it, but the timing of it wasn't good.
Yeah.
If there was any doubt about me, being able to, step up as a drummer, I certainly had kind of, wrote my own, go home ticket with getting on him about some stuff that I really was, I was a spazzy kid,
So when you leave, what's your next phase after you leave Samhain?
I left, and then within just a couple months. Well, actually, I gigged around New Jersey for a moment, and then moved back to Baltimore, and joined a group called Dagnasty, which was an up-and-coming hardcore act.
Dagnasty is like a super group with members of Minor Threat and the Descendants.
Yes. Yeah. And so
that's a big gig.
Yeah, it was a big gig. It wasn't something I was totally sold on musically. It was a much different vibe than, I like heavy music. I like scary stuff. I like intense stuff. And Dagnasty was, almost like more of a pop band, which I like too, but I think at the moment I didn't quite get it.
Aren't they kind of given a little bit of credit for like kind of creating emo a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. And maybe emo wasn't where my heart was at the moment. I mean, you can imagine, I'd been with Samhain for so long that I was like, was more looking, I thought I'd be in like a metal band, because I was really into, a lot of metal at the time. And they had encouraged me, after I had left the band, they were all saying, you need to just be in a metal, you're into Iron Maiden, you should be in an Iron kind of Maiden band. What we're doing and what you're really into, they encouraged me to be in a metal band, which I thought would be appropriate.
How long are you in Dagnasty for?
Dagnasty was short-lived. Dagnasty was like about 6 months.
Okay, but you recorded with them, didn't you?
Did not record, but I did a tour with them.
The next thing I want to know about is a band called Lunchbox with Ron Emory of T.S.O.L.
Yeah, wow, right on, cool.
So tell me about that.
In '87, actually, I met this guy when I was on tour with Dagnasty. I met this guy when Dagnasty played in L.A. He was a singer-songwriter, and he had given me a demo. And this guy, Tim Swinson, he had given me a demo of some of his solo stuff, just because we liked the same kind of bands. As much as I'm into metal and stuff, there was also kind of a roots rock Americana thing that I was also feeling at the time. And Tim was a great writer and a great singer, and he sent me this demo of his songs that I was so impressed by that I packed my stuff in a van and drove out to be in a band with him. And we started Lunchbox in '87, and Ron joined in '88. And it was a great band. We had the best shows. We had a record contract with Capitol. We lost the record contract with Capitol and never quite recovered, which is a shame. Great band, great songs, great times. I'm still friends with Ron, still friends with Tim, and Lunchbox was a band that just coulda, shoulda, and it didn't.
What did you learn from working with Ron Emory?
What I learned: don't do drugs. Don't do drugs. Yeah, not me personally, but drugs suck. Drugs will. I've had a lot of lost a lot of friends, and I've seen a lot of people suffer from drugs. So don't do drugs.
I guess your next major group is Distorted Pony.
Distorted Pony was was a real change for me. It was about 1991. I'd been playing in rock bands for a while, and there was this kind of underground LA scene that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't hardcore. It wasn't Guns N' Roses. There was this kind of street level like industrial, like Neubauten sort of like these
Skinny
noise
Puppy
bands.
was happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of really heavy stuff was coming out that was not like rock and roll, you know. It was like, it was like Sonic Youth meets Black Flag, you know, meets Art School, Berlin, just, you know, really heavy stuff. And I got really, I had gone to see some of these bands, and Distorted Pony was one of these bands, and they had a drum machine. And it was just, they were pulverizing, you know, it was just really heavy and really different. And they had been trying to get Steve Albini to produce their first record, and Albini said, I'd be more into this if you got a real drummer, you know, because he had done the Big Black thing with a drum machine, and I guess he was kind of feeling that, you know, that was very limited. And so he encouraged them to get a drummer, and they asked me to play because I was friends with him and had seen him. And I thought it was a great opportunity to just completely expand my horizon as a drummer, you know. And so we did 2 records with Steve, and did a lot of touring, and the band broke up in '93, right as our second record came out, which is the one we're most well known for, which was another like, you know. But as we'll talk about later, having a second chance with Distorted Pony this year, so I'm very excited about that.
2 highlights from that period.
Well, working with Albini was great. We got to go to Chicago and record with him in his house. At that time, you know, his house, this like really kind of normal little kind of family home, had been converted into this really cool studio. So being on the road with Distorted Pony was great. Let's see, so much, especially now that we're back together again. There is, all we talk about is
yeah,
just like,
I know.
remember this and remember that, and it's just like, it's just fallen right back into, you know, a situation where it's, you know, there was some rough times, you know, we had some pretty rough tours. You know, we got to play with the Unsane, we got to play, you know, I got to meet Jim Thirlwell, Fetus, you know, who was a big hero of mine. You know, we got to play a lot of LA gigs, you know, Kurt Cobain, you know, and Courtney were there and stuff like that, you know, which was cool back then, and now it's really cool.
Yeah.
You know, getting to play with Beat Happenings and being part of the K Records scene, which seems like, you know, night and day between what Distorted Pony was doing. But, you know, putting out these noisy records that, you know, that to this day, you know, still hold up and people are still really into them. You know, I wouldn't say a lot of people, but people do remember that band, and I'm very, you know, once again, I just kind of fell into something that ends up being classic, you know. I mean, not to the masses. I don't get it twisted. I'm not a famous rock star, but in some areas people recognize, you know, the bands that I was in, and that means a lot. Tell
me about the Samhain reunion tour in 1999.
That came upon, you know, kind of suddenly and surprisingly. I had moved back out to LA. I had moved away for a couple years, and had started playing guitar and was writing a lot. And Glenn said, "Come back out to LA. Get your band. Come out to LA. It's not going to happen where you are." I was living in Louisville, Kentucky at the time, which is cool for an art scene. But you know, I was kind of my style of music was not quite, you know, what was flowing there, you know. So Glenn was interested in working with the band and said, "Come out to LA and I'll produce you guys and help you guys get a deal." I was too good to turn down, so I came back out to LA, and me and Glenn had started hanging out again, which was great because we had had some bad blood, you know, after I had left the band, and so it was nice to you know, to be able to hang out again and talk about music and have him actually work on my stuff. I'll never forget that, sitting with Glenn and actually having him, you know, taking notes on stuff that I had written, you know, and making changes to stuff. That was beyond cool. And I guess, and also I had worked, I guess there was a weird coincidence. I had worked for this music manager, and that manager ended up being cousins with Steve Zing. And so Steve and I had talked, you know, once in the past, and Steve and Glenn were talking, and everything just kind of happened where he decided it was time to do Samhain again. I don't know. I don't know if we pushed him to do it. You know, you can't really push Glenn to do anything, you know. But he had this great idea that we would get back together and tour and re-release the records, and it was just, it all came all of a sudden. I hadn't played drums in 10 years. I'd been playing guitar. Damien was on board for the tour, and then at the last minute, his commitment to Iggy Pop. He was playing in Iggy's band, and he had been in Iggy's band for a long time. And it was either do a 5-week tour with Samhain and lose his gig with Iggy that he'd been doing for, you know, that's a career, you know, move with Iggy versus 5 weeks with us.
Yeah.
It was sad that he wasn't able to do the tour, but I understood, you know.
So you traded off, right? You played bass
yes,
sometimes?
I played bass, and on the first part of the set, because Erie was not part of the reunion, you know, that's something between him and Glenn, you know. And there was no way, you know, to convince Glenn otherwise. He just did not want to, he didn't want to relive his falling out with Yuri, you know, and I can respect that. You know, it would have been nice if everybody had been able to put their differences aside and make this happen, but it was what it was. And there were a couple times that it looked like it was not going to happen, you know, and so Steve and I just hustled to make it happen. And Todd, you know, who was playing in Danzig at the time, you know, we worked long and hard to be able to present something to Glenn that he would be proud of, as far as having a backing band that was competent, that we could go out there and play those songs again and, you know, represent it. And so we worked hard, you know. It would be like Danzig rehearsals for Todd, and then he'd come to my house and we would work, and then Steve would come out and we would work, and we'd talk on the phone all the time, and it was just, you know, everybody hustled to make that happen.
Briefly, some of the highlights of that period.
Well, the tour started in, I guess it was like November 1st. The first show that Samhain did after 13 years was actually on Samhain, which is November 1st. We played the Palladium, which was our first show. So playing on Samhain at the Palladium, our first show, was unbelievable. The roar of the crowd when I walked out, it took my breath away. All that stuff still, you know, I still get very nervous at shows, you know, and walking out and hearing people just roar, you know, and me playing bass, you know, was just like, wow, this is really happening. And it was like that really every night. It was like that every night, you know, being on a bus, you know, having a dressing room, all that kind of stuff. Because Samhain, you know, it was a big band in the day, but still being in a big band in that era meant maybe having a Motel 6 that you stayed in once a week. Otherwise, you still stayed at people's houses, you know. Maybe having money to, you know, to eat and go to a toy store and buy some action figures, you know, which was, we were pretty into.
That's cool.
You know, but so yeah, the Samhain thing in '99 was mind-blowing. It was like, to me, it was like being in Led Zeppelin, you know, and not limos or anything, but certainly the crowds were crazy. I had a big accident on stage in Detroit at the Fox Theater, which was pretty monumental. I dislocated my arm and was taken away in an ambulance midway through the show. So that was pretty intense. But they popped me back in at the hospital. They shot me up with a bunch of morphine and put my arm back in, and I showed up in a sling, you know, knocking on the tour bus, and they're like, "We're done, right?" And I'm like, "Just give me a chance. Give me a chance. I think I can pull this off. It feels good. It feels good." You know, I'm all jacked up on morphine. I'm like, I can do this. And we played the next night, and I finished the tour with a busted arm. You know, I had to ice it, and, you know, I was a little limited in what I could do. No more, you know, no more Tommy Lee shit. It was definitely just like keep the beat. And we finished the tour, you know, which, you know, I'm very, as I said, I'm a survivor. I really will look, you know, I look at all that stuff as a challenge, you know. It's like, how can I make this work? Now, you know, you know, I feel very, the injury wasn't as bad. I actually re-injured myself a year later and wasn't able to play for 8 months. But, you know, I've had some good luck and some really crazy bad luck.
When this tour ends, what does Glenn say to you, essentially?
Glenn says to me, we're going to do more. You know, we got offers from all over the world to play now that the band was back. And there was a couple shows that we had to cancel during the tour that we had planned to do makeup shows. Once again, I get back into that mode where I'm an obnoxious, ungrateful teenager, and I upset the apple cart once again. And Glenn and I don't speak for a couple years.
So after this tour with Samhain's done,
right?
You walk away from it. Essentially, it's over.
Right.
So tell me how you got in Tiger Army.
We did a autograph signing at the old Tower Records.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Danzig autograph signing, and we were there and signing records for kids and stuff. And this kid came up to me and said, you know, I'm in a band, and you check my CD out. And it was Nick 13 from Tiger Army. And I always get CDs on tour and stuff. And I went home after the tour and had a stack of shit. And I was like, well, you know, I would appreciate it if somebody heard my stuff, if I went to the trouble to meet somebody. You know, I've done that a million. I do that today. I meet people and hand them a CD. And so Nick's CD, and he also gave me a sticker and had his phone number on the back. And I knew he was friends with AFI. And the first Tiger Army had some really good music on it. You know, I was like, holy shit, this is really good. So I called him just to say I got it and that I liked it. And he said, well, I'm moving down to California. You know, he was living in like Berkeley at the time, I think. I could be wrong, but he was up north. He said, I'm moving to LA. And I said, great, you know, when you're down here, we should hang out. And we hung out a couple of times, and he said he was trying to put a band together. And that they didn't have a drummer, and I said, I'd be happy to play for you. And so I, you know, started playing with him, and it was, you know, it was cool, and we did the record, and we did a tour, and, you know, I left the band, you know. It was bittersweet, because I liked the record. I liked the band, I liked the record, you know. Nick and I were, you know, just kind of at a different, just coming at things from a different perspective at that time. You know, I'd been in a bunch of bands. I just really wasn't, you know, being in a band with Glenn puts you at a certain level of like, you know, I don't know. I guess if I wasn't in a band with Glenn and being told how to do things, I didn't want to be in another band where things were very structured. You know what I'm saying? You know, things are very structured with Glenn. I didn't want to join another band that was very structured, and things got very structured in Tiger Army.
So yeah, because it was Nick 13's vision, essentially.
Exactly,
yeah.
Exactly, and I totally respect that, but it was at that point in my career, I wasn't really up for another experience where things were just so.
But you do the album.
I do the album, I do the tour, I do the Power of Moonlight,
okay.
Tiger Army 2 record.
And it's successful.
Yes, it's a great record.
And you do have fun on the tour.
Well, that's when things started to get a little rough between Nick and I, because that's when the band ramped up, you know, to a different level of performance. And, you know, Nick was, you know, he's kind of a hothead like Glenn, you know, and as I said, after spending so much time with Glenn, I did not want to be in a hothead band. You know, I'm kind of a mellow person. I like to have fun. You know, it just wasn't my scene.
What was the best part of being in Tiger Army for you?
The best part were the fans. The best part was, you know, I was skeptical that Tiger Army had such an appeal. You know, I liked it. I thought it was cool. I thought Nick was a good writer. I thought he was a good singer. And he told me, he said, you'll be surprised when you play with us at how crazy people get. And I was like, right, I'll believe it when I see it. And shit, did people just go bananas for that band. And I was shocked. I mean, the first show, I was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
You are right, I am wrong. You know, it was, you know, I actually got a kick out of being like, well, Nick, you were right. You know, and that happened a couple times during the, you know, my time in the band, where I was really skeptical of how Nick wanted to do things, you know, but he was right. he was right, and he has gone on to have a great career, you know, and I'm very supportive. You know, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. And not to mention that some of the most beautiful women in the world follow that band. So,
yes.
So that's always a plus.
Always a plus.
That's always a plus.
A plus.
Son of Sam.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a super group. You have Davey Havok from AFI, and he was in AFI at the time.
Correct.
And then you get Glenn to guest on vocals on the
Right.
album. Tell me the Son of Sam thing, how it came together, and you know what became of it.
Well, we had taken AFI out on the Samhain Danzig tour, and when we had gotten home from the tour, Todd had been working on some songs that he thought would make a good, like, little single, you know, just something kind of for fun. There was a guy who was running the Danzig website, the Seventh House, and we were like, man, we should get the Seventh House to put out a record. We'll start the Seventh House, you know, we'll kickstart the Seventh House record label, you know, and we'll do this little record. And he came over, and he had a bunch of these songs that were like really great Samhain-esque songs, but you know, he just had put a twist on them. And he said, we should call your buddy Davey and see if he wants to do something. And Davey said, yeah, I'm in. And we got Steve to play, you know, we just traded tapes. You know, Todd and I had this little electronic drum set and this little old hard disk recorder. And we would record these little demos, you know, with guitar, bass, and drums, and send them, you know, a couple songs every week, every couple weeks to Davey and to Steve. And when Davey talked to Nitro about doing this, they said, well, why stop at a single? We'll do a record. And all of a sudden we were doing a record. And we'd still never played together. We'd still never heard what Davey intended to do on the record. We were just sending him instrumentals. And Davey flew down, and I think he was there for 2 or 3 days, and just completely blew us away. I had no idea he was capable of not only the singing, but the writing. He wrote all those melodies. He wrote the lyrics, the melodies, the hooks, boom, and he just went in and did it, and it was something else. It just was everything aligned for that record. Howie Pyro plays on it. Joey C. from Danzig plays drums on a song. Glenn plays on it. Glenn plays keyboards. He doesn't sing on it. He plays keyboard and guitars. Okay. We all sang backup vocals, and it was done in like 5 or 7 days. And it was a remarkable record, and I can't believe it came together.
Okay, and then why does that end?
AFI was in, you know, they were charging ahead with their DreamWorks album. Mm-hmm. They had were in the process of leaving Nitro and going to DreamWorks. And there was kind of no turning back for AFI at that point. You know, we had some plans to do some shows, and you know, we just weren't able to nail Davey down for, you know, any significant amount of time where we could actually do some shows and promote the band.
So essentially, it's just a project.
Essentially, it was just a project.
And it was
we
fun
had
for
high
you.
Hopes. Yeah, we had high hopes because it came out so well. You know, I think that's, you know, anytime your first date goes well, you want to do more, you know, and it went so well that we were all excited about doing stuff, but it just, scheduling wise, it just wasn't something. And I was in Tiger Army at the time, and that was full on. Mm-hmm. Todd was in Danzig at the time, and that was full on, you know, and so trying to coordinate things was really difficult because nobody wanted to put aside.
Nobody wants to leave success to do something that's unknown. Tell me about the reunion of Distorted Pony and what you're going to be doing next.
Well, Distorted Pony, we got back together this year. It's our 20th anniversary, and we are doing shows. We're going to be hoping to go to Europe maybe in December. We were supposed to go this summer, but it's been postponed. We're writing. We'll actually be recording in August. We're excited about that. That's another, it's a lot of work to put that together. The singer and guitar player and writer lives in Austin now, so he flies in and we do a couple shows. We'll be doing some shows in August. We played in May. We did 3 shows in May. We've got 2 records that are out of print that we're working on re-releasing, and getting some new stuff out. And it's just, that was another thing it just felt right. There's a lot of water under the bridge, in that band, and we're back together, and it feels good.
Good. All right, London.
Thank
it's been
you
great
so
having
much.
you on the show,
Thank
man.
you so
Thank
much.
you. Blaring Out with Eric Blair Show with London May signing off.
The Blaring Out Show.